All right, now this question set is on industrialization. This is going to be the first set in this section. Number one, which statement best describes the location of factories in New England during the early 1800s? All right, now, factories in New England at this time, in the early 1800s, this is before electricity, okay? So, take that into account. All right, they needed to be close to coal deposits. Some factories, yes, but not really. Coal could be shipped in by train or by barge or whatever. They need to be located next to rivers. Well, this makes sense. We'll get to that in a second. C, they were located on isolated areas. That makes no sense. We can get rid of that. D, they need to be close to railroads. This seemingly makes about as much sense as B, except for one difference. It's a lot easier to build a railroad going to a certain area than it is to build a river going to a certain area. So it's actually going to be B. And the reason is, besides the transportation needs and the ability to ship resources and then to ship finished products, um, most of the power for these factories was provided using the water itself. They would have these big paddle wheels out into the river, and as the current of the river turned the wheel, it would spin a shaft, which would then go into basically like a giant transmission for this factory, and then it would be broken down into transfer cases and PTO shafts that went all over the factory, and ultimately powered the equipment in the factory. So the answer on this one's going to be B. All right, number two. Now this sign right here, this flyer, things that jump out. Attention working men, okay? Mass meeting, so it's for a large group of people. Haymarket, you should recognize the Haymarket Square riot thing. All right, working men, arm yourselves and appear in full force. This doesn't seem like it's something to be taken lightly. The above poster suggests the 19th century industrialization was often accompanied by. Okay, let's go ahead and eliminate the ones that are definitely wrong. I'm sitting here looking at A. A is a possibility, so we'll leave it. B. Farm protests. This has nothing to do with the farmers, so we can get rid of B. C. Technological progress. There's nothing on this about technological progress. D. Political stability. Actually, this is encouraging instability from a political standpoint. Okay, so the answer to this one's going to be A. All right, on number three here, the chart shows the population change in the city of Chicago between 1840 and 1890. If you notice, population goes way up. What's the best explanation for this? Okay. Now, before we go any further, one of the things that we do with multiple choice questions, try to answer the question before you ever look at the answer choices. And what I mean by that is formulate what could be the answer and then see if any of them match up. What you're going to see is throughout U.S. history, population shifts have been basically dictated by the availability of jobs. Okay, so do we have one that matches up? Yes, A matches up. Now let's make sure that it's right, and we move on. A is the correct answer. People moved to Chicago for jobs. Number four, what did the American Federation of Labor try to achieve in the late 1800s? Okay, so American Federation of Labor was a union. Unions fight for workers' rights and working conditions. Again, there's really only one or there might be two answers on here. B or C could be technically correct when you start looking at it, except for the American Federation of Labor didn't really go after employee ownership of factories and mines. That would have been a good idea, but they didn't do it. So the answer for this one's going to be B. Number five. Okay, this map shows four different shaded regions of the area. Okay, which one of these was the least industrialized in the second half of the 1800s? It's going to be D. And let's look at it. In New England and in the Midwest, we had factories. We had people producing things. But in the South, and D shows North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, we have agricultural crops. We have cash crops. We have basically it's a farming industry. So it's really going to be D. There's no factories or anything here. Number six, Ford's production of the Model Ts in the early 20th century demonstrated the economic relationship between specialization and what? Okay, this is a kind of fill in the blank type question. Um, let's say A, reduced labor demand. Well, production went up to the point that you still needed a lot of labor, so it's not going to be A. B. Greater efficiencies in production. In other words, if you teach one person to do one job and teach them to do it very, very well, it becomes more efficient. It gets done more efficiently. That's sounds about right. So we'll leave that one there. All right. C. Higher production costs. Well, it'd be the exact opposite. D. Decreased union organization. Okay, so in other words, breaking down unions. As more people are working in factories, the exact opposite happens. More people get involved with unions. So it's actually going to be B. Specialization, increased efficiency. Number 7. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, the U.S. government attempted to facilitate the growth of domestic industry by doing what? All right, what that means is what did the government do to try to help our businesses here grow? All right, let's look at A. Placing high tariff barriers on foreign imports. In other words, taxing products coming from other countries. Would that help our businesses? Yeah, that would definitely help our businesses. But was that what they did? I don't know. Let's move on. B. Encouraging the growth of labor unions. No, that would actually hinder businesses. So we're going to eliminate B. C. Repealing the Sherman Antitrust Act. That could potentially help some businesses grow. However, they didn't do it. Matter of fact, it was passed during this time period, so it's not C. D. Providing subsidies to small businesses. No, they were still working under the strict laissez-faire economic model. So the whole idea of government helping out a small business didn't make sense. It's going to be A. And they did. They placed taxes on anything coming into our country, which sounded like a great idea. It made it to where no other foreign industries couldn't compete in the U.S. market. However, pretty soon what happens is all these countries whose goods we were taxing started taxing our stuff, and it destroyed our ability to do business with a lot of other countries. It actually wound up hurting business more than it helped. All right, number 8. Members of the Populist Party supported public ownership of railroads because they thought it would what? All right, let's go see what we know about the Populist Party. The Populist Party was primarily farmers, so we know that. They were primarily farmers. Okay, now they wanted public ownership, so the government ownership of railroads. Why would they do this? Well, let's look here. Would it help small farmers? It possibly could, so let's hold on to A. B. Reduce immigration. And that's not going to have anything at all to do with immigration, so we can get rid of that. C. Decrease income taxes. This is back before income taxes, so it's not going to be C. D. Change monetary policy. What does railroad ownership have to do with monetary policy? Nothing. So the answer to this one by default is A, to help small farmers. But go ahead and get in your mind when you see populist, it's referring to farmers. All right, number 9. Which statement best describes the effects of the Industrial Revolution on northern and southern states? Okay, so how did the Industrial Revolution help both? All right, A. Southern states were able to diversify their economy by creating more manufactured goods. No, they didn't, so we remove A. B. Railroads led to the growth of southern cities and greater need for slave labor. No, that didn't happen either. C. The textile industry boomed in the north, encouraging immigrants to move to work in factories and creating a greater demand for cotton in the southern states. Let's sit back and think about this one. Factories are getting bigger in the north. They're producing more. They need more cotton to produce what they're producing. So the south is growing more cotton. That makes sense. Let's hold on to C. D. In addition to the factory system, northern states were able to improve farming methods to include cash crops. That just didn't happen. So the answer to this one's going to be C. All right, number 11. How did government policies of the Gilded Age in the late 1800s promote industrialization? So what did they do to help build up our economy? A. Imperialism fueled steel production in the United States. It didn't. It just didn't happen, so we'll remove A. B. New Deal policies created jobs for many of the unemployed. New Deal didn't come around until the 1930s, okay, and this is talking late 1800s, so we know that one's wrong. C. The Sherman Antitrust Act allowed for regulation of big business. Regulation is not going to promote growth and promote industrialization, so just by nature, C is wrong. D. Laissez-faire economic policies allowed private businesses to operate freely. Laissez-faire, remember, means hands off. It means the government basically stayed out of business, allowing businesses to do what they want, and businesses were successful. Okay, it's going to be D. The government stepped back and let businesses kind of run with what they were doing, and the businesses grew exponentially. Number 12. How did labor unions affect the lives of many workers during the late 19th century? Okay, think about it. Labor unions fought for better working conditions, better pay, things like that. Okay, so which one of these goes with that? Um, A. Shorter hours and better pay. That makes sense. Let's hold on to that one. B. They helped workers take over ownership of factories and mines. Well, that's a benefit, but they didn't do it, so we can eliminate B. C. They worked with lawmakers to pass pro-business legislation. No, they worked with lawmakers to pass pro-labor legislation. Okay, pro-business would have been against the unions. So C can't be right. D, they welcomed workers of any race or gender to join their strikes. No, a lot of these unions, especially in the late 1800s, were very, very segregated. So it's going to be A, shorter hours, better pay. Number 13, which characteristic of the Industrial Revolution contributed to the rise of labor unions? In other words, why did people join labor unions? Is it A, the competition created by immigrant workers? No, competition would lower the value of labor and the unions would have less power, so it wouldn't be that one. B, the working conditions found in many factories. Well, why do you join a labor union to work to get better working conditions? Because your working conditions are very poor in the first place. So that makes sense. Let's hold on to B. C. The results of mass production on agricultural prices. No, had nothing to do with it. So we're going to remove C. D. The influence of political machines on company towns. Um, you'd like to think that had something to do with it. That they tried to, dismantle these political machines, but that's not what happened. Okay, so it's going to be B. It was the working conditions that forced many people to join labors. All right, if you take a look at this cartoon, it's supposed to be showing the relationship between industry and government. The snake in the cartoon um, is supposed to be industry. And if you look back, it's wrapped around the Capitol building. Um, that's where Congress meets, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Okay, so that's our legislative branch. So we know that the snake is dealing with the legislative branch. All right. How does the artist believe the industry has affected the politics in the United States? A. By expanding the power of the political machines? Possibly. Well, hold on to A. B. By forcing politicians to seek campaign contributions? No, that's not exactly what it did. Inadvertently, it leads to that, but it's not going to be B. C. By jeopardizing the legitimacy of the executive branch. The executive branch is the president. This one really doesn't deal with the president per se. All right, by threatening the independence of the legislative branch. Well, this cartoon is directly tied to the legislative branch, and it's going to be D. Um, big business had a few impacts on the legislative branch. First of all, um, if you have large factories and large businesses in areas where you have constituents that are voting for you, the last thing you want to do is create any kind of law that would hurt that business and therefore cause them to make cutbacks. This would hurt your election chances. So that's one problem. Another problem is businesses started bribing legislators. Businesses started taking them on nice trips and vacations and, flat out trying to pay them. Okay, and this was a major problem, especially in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Okay, so this is going to be D, by threatening the independence of the legislative branch. All right, and our last question here, number 15. In 1888, Ohio Senator John Sherman introduced an antitrust bill into Congress. The following excerpt is from a speech he delivered on the floor of the Senate. The popular mind is agitated with problems that may disturb social order. None is more threatening than the concentration of capital into vast combinations. Congress alone can deal with them, and if we are unwilling or unable to, there will soon be a trust for every product and a master to fix the price for every necessity of life. What is Sherman's analysis of impact of trust on a capitalist economy? Now, a trust literally runs everybody else out of business. Everybody joins into one big company that can therefore control prices and control supply. So, A, he suggested that law would help consumers by protecting unrestricted competition among industries. Okay, that's a good idea, but that's not what he suggests here. B, he proposed punishing monopolies by transferring ownership to corporations of corporations to the government. He never proposes that, so it's not going to be B. C, he proposed to protect economic growth by requiring that profits be distributed to workers. There's nothing in this little excerpt that remotely goes with that, so let's get rid of C. D, he suggested that government was needed to balance the power of concentrated wealth. Okay, he makes the statement that Congress alone can deal with them. That in and of itself, that's kind of the telltale sign that that's the answer.